Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I'm your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. We have another fantastic episode for you guys today. We are talking about veterans affected by the NFL draft. So we've been talking about rookies the last 3 or 4 podcasts now, probably the last 2 months in reality. But it's time to get swing back into things with some veterans. If you haven't done your rookie drafts, I do tell you should probably go and check out some of our last few episodes here. They're pretty good advice for those who are trying to do their rookie drafts if you have yet to do them. I've basically finished all mine. Very upsetting, but it's what it is. But I want to talk about some veterans, some veterans that are affected by the draft that either had their value raised over that weekend or had fallen over the weekend that you should consider maybe buying or selling or what have you at this point. So let me introduce the crew. As always, Coach Tyler, what is going on, bro?
What's up, guys? Let's get into it.
Absolutely. And Coach Steve, what's going on?
Yeah, not much, man. Another week in paradise. We're in early May. So, of course, I've already done a few underdog drafts over the weekend. I mean, after the draft, I'm interested to see where this ADP lies. And it's, some of it is pretty skewed. So I think that if you listen to us, you can have an advantage, not only in Dynasty, but on those underdog drafts too.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. I saw some notifications pop up. I'm like, I guess I got to put some money into underdog. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's going to be, again, fun show today, guys. We have some things to talk about before we get into the veterans. So let's get to that first. Starting off here, let's see here. We're going to start with some big signing today. Jared Goff signs a big extension today, 4-year, $212 million extension, makes him close to one of the highest paid or the highest paid quarterback in the league right now. I think it's close to the highest. I'm not sure if it's the highest, but pretty close to the top there. So, guys, Jared Goff, 4-year extension. Where do you see him in Dynasty moving forward right now? He's got a fantastic team around him. He's in a prime age of being quarterback right now, early 30s. How high is Jared Goff for you guys? Because, I mean, he QB1 last year. He has the weapons for the future now. Where do you guys see Jared Goff right now? Where does he rank for you guys?
I'll start it off. I just think that now that this contract has happened, and he's, by the way, Steve, he's the highest paid Lion ever.
Lion.
Yeah, well, he's just the highest paid Lion ever. and Jerry Jones needs to manage his pockets, because the longer he waits and more quarterbacks get signed, the higher Dak's number is going to go up too, by the way. But going on to Jared Goff, it's in Dynasty, he's the perfect QB2 for your team that wants to win now. And now that the contract is here, he actually might be a little bit more pricey than, because I think before today, nobody's really still looking at Jared Goff through the lens of, being valuable for your Dynasty roster. Obviously, with the age, he doesn't do a lot for you in terms of flash, right? But now that the contract is here, I think that it might be a little bit harder to get him. But I would still, if you're a contender, trade for Jared Goff in Dynasty and have him be just a solid QB2 for your team if that's a position you need.
I like it. Coach Tyler, how do you feel?
Yeah, no, I love Jared Goff. You look at the team around him. I'm a big Amon-Ra St. Brown guy. I've got a lot of shares of him. And one of the things that I looked forward to in his future are the Lions going to extend Goff? And we see the commitment here. But yeah, the Lions just have all the weapons. They've got Amon-Ra St. Brown who emerged. They had the rookie outstanding tight end in Sam Laporta last year. They've got a great double-headed running back room with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Jameson Williams, he could still end up being something a couple years after his draft day. But that offense is just powerful. You look at it, his first year there, just over 3,200 yards, 19-8 in terms of touchdowns to interception. Not really overly impressive, right? But we see the back half of that year is the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And we start to see that team build a little bit more, right? 2 years ago, we've got just under 4,500 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And then last year, over 4,500 with 30 and 12, right? This is a team that is going to be aggressive, which I love. We got Dan Campbell talking about biting all those kneecaps on the way down. We got a team that's going to be aggressive. He's got passing yards to everyone on that team, including Penei Sewell. So they're just going to put the ball in his hands and trust that something's going to happen. But yeah, I view Jared Goff as a very high-end quarterback too. We do have this big stream of rookie quarterbacks coming in, and that's going to sort of change and make us adjust our rankings. And I think that there is a world where, if you aren't getting a Caleb Williams or a Jaden Daniels and you don't really want to sit there with JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix and you still haven't done your rookie draft, or you just know that someone in your league that's holding Jared Goff loves one of these rookie QBs, you're in a position to go get a very proven talent with one of the best offensive rosters around him who is going to produce for you, right? If you're in deep rebuild, I don't know about investing all that in Jared Goff, maybe stay young. But Jared Goff isn't overly old, and we've seen a resurgence in both his career and just the Lions as a franchise. I think that he's a very high-end QB2, if not staying up in that low QB1 range going forward.
Yeah, no, I like your guys' breakdown on that. Jared Goff is definitely someone I feel like right now, bad time to buy because his name just kind of got highlighted. He knows he's going to be with the Lions the next 4 years. I think the unknown of him being a Lion after this season was something that you could have bought low on. It might cost you a little bit more now, but if you are a contending team and players like, and people might not agree with me, but like players like Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Tua, some of these guys are kind of on the, and I consider them still borderline QB1 territories where they're ranked as a QB1, but they're not high enough to be considered a complete hold. Like obviously some of the other guys like Mahomes and Allen's, Goff plus something else for one of those guys, I much rather have, because Goff's not going to always consistently put up maybe 30 points per game like some of these upside plays that the other guys I just mentioned might have, but he's going to give you 22, 24 points in a lot of weeks here. And you're going to get something on top of that and a steady offense that it might be a little run heavy, but they're going to give him the ball as much as possible. This team is built to win. They have a good core around them. They have players that are growing into prime positions in their respective positions overall. So, you might be okay still going out there to get Goff. It might not be as cheap now, but I'd still highly consider it. If you're one of those teams that are in the middle or if you're contending, Goff can give you stability as a potential QB1, but definitely a fantastic QB2 for a dynasty roster right now. All right, over to some signings that weren't extensions over the past week here. We had another trio of wide receivers signed, veteran wide receivers signed. Tyler Boyd lands with the Titans. Zay Jones lands with the Cardinals. Allen Robinson lands with the Giants. Is any one of these three wide receivers someone that you guys think could help produce in 2024 for dynasty rosters or just rosters in general?
Maybe Tyler Boyd. They're just kind of searching for pass catchers out there. They signed Calvin Ridley in Tennessee, but DeAndre Hopkins is getting up there in age and he's slowing down a little bit. Chiga Okonkwo hasn't necessarily been what everyone hyped him up to be. So they're looking for pass catchers out there, and obviously they don't have Derrick Henry running the ball anymore. This is a new regime coming in, so there's a chance that they're more pass heavy with big arm Will Levis. So Boyd is probably the only one out of these three that would excite me in terms of, if I had to pick one, it'd be Boyd. I think also Boyd sort of solidifies the buy window for Jermaine Burton, because the question was, is Boyd going to go back to Cincinnati? And Burton sort of filling that role on top of Cincinnati telling Boyd to basically kick rocks, sort of opens up and solidifies that buy window. But of these three, Boyd would be the one just taking a chance on an offense that's probably going to change how they've looked in the past couple of years.
That's fair. I like it. Coach Steve, anything for you?
Yeah, I think that, I saw Zay Jones on a couple waiver wires. He should be added. Tyler Boyd isn't going to be on waivers most likely, but if he is, definitely add him. He's not somebody you necessarily want to trade for. He's not going to give you much value in terms of like a trade piece either. I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, like if you add Tyler Boyd, that'll really do it. And then A-Rob, just keep him on waivers. I think he's good there.
That's fair. I like it. Yeah, I mean, the one person I'd like to target still is Zay Jones. I mean, outside of, Harrison and McBride, there really wasn't a third option on that team that was, trustworthy. I mean, I like Michael Wilson to hopefully step up. But again, I've said that about a lot of wide receivers, and they have not done that. So it always ends up turning back to the veteran, which, to be honest, they need a veteran on this offense here to be able to produce. And Zay Jones, when healthy, I mean, is a solid wide receiver, someone that can put up 4 for 50 most weeks. Again, it's not flashy, but someone during a bye week replacement can get you through a week here and there when needed during the season this year. He's not a bad guy. Again, he was on a lot of waivers. He got picked up everywhere. He's the piece right now. If you're looking for like an extra throw-in piece, it's Zay Jones. If someone's like, hey, let me get Zay Jones off your team, it's like, I don't think many people are like, wanting to keep Zay Jones completely on their team because it's still Zay Jones. He's an older veteran, but if he does get him that wide receiver 2 role on this Cardinals offense, it can be decent. And for a contending team, it could help you out there.
If it wasn't for that injury, I would be more excited about Zay Jones as like maybe that is a sneaky piece that I could add for just, a 1-year sort of thing. But I am kind of worried about the way last year ended where he was hurt. And I think he came back and it just didn't look good. There was a lot going on with that knee. So we'll see. I hope he makes a good comeback because you're right. I mean, he's always been a good player.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of news, I mean, that's really it. The NFL schedule comes out on Wednesday. I'm always excited about that for about 5 minutes. Then I'm like, okay, I don't care anymore now. Give us the actual season.
We got more schedule news today.
We got 2 things today. What was the Ravens and the Chiefs opening night? Can't see. That's fantastic. I don't know if this was for week 1. I think it is, but Tom Brady's obviously doing some broadcasting this year, and it's Browns, Cowboys. I think that's week 1.
Yeah, it's
so
week
they brought
1
that out too. I saw that too. So that's cool. That's cool for him. So, but Wednesday's always
fun. As funny as he was on his roast, then I think he'll be a pretty good commentator because he was pretty good.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see if he can handle it for 4 hours of talking. So we'll have to see. But NFL schedule is always a good 15 minutes of fun during the week. So I wish it was just tonight. Just get it out of the way with. Why wait till Wednesday? But they have to be done with it. What's the point of holding it? So I hate when they also leak it too, and it's just like, just let it out. Just let it go. But they have to make their viewership somehow. So.
Yep.
Again, that's it for news. We didn't really talk about undrafted free agents. I just wanted to kind of go over that real quick. If there's anyone out there that maybe you're still out on waivers that any of you guys kind of worth stashing. I have a couple players just in mind, but I'll let you guys kind of say if there's anybody out there that's worth just throwing on your taxi squad and maybe hoping for the best.
I'll throw out 2 quarterbacks. Jack Plummer. Actually, he's going to be the 3rd quarterback going into the year for the Panthers. I mean, if people aren't, excited about Bryce Young, which I think he'll be better this year, and then you got Andy Dalton there, you got this 3rd guy. I would say compare him to like a young Joe Flacco in terms of just like height and mobility, but with like the big arm. So he's there. He's on the roster. Transfer to Louisville, had a decent year last year. And then one guy, Talia Tagovailoa, actually to his brother. I mean, for what it is, I mean, it's just the Big Ten, but he is the all-time leader in passing yards now for the Big Ten. And last I checked, he was in Arizona working out with them. So that's another murky kind of quarterback room outside of Kyler that if he were to make that roster, I mean, yeah, he would definitely be worth a taxi squad stash.
That's fair. Tyler, anyone else on your end?
Yeah, a couple. Number 1, probably Blake Watson, running back from Memphis, over with the Broncos. I was a big Javonte Williams fan when he came into the league, and I've just been burned by him so much that I'm just ready to see anyone else carrying the ball in Denver. But that backfield is just a mess. Javonte is the number 1 outright if everyone is healthy. But the problem is Javonte is never healthy. And then we've got, Jaleel McLaughlin. You throw Blake Watson in there. I think there's another person there that's, no name enough for me not to remember who's there. But if you're looking for guys to compete and come out of camp, Blake Watson has a 3-down skill set. So he could be, if anything, kept on as a special teamer and work his way up as, injuries and the season continues. But, just buying into that backfield, if you're just throwing a guy on and you're getting him for as cheap as you would get a Blake Watson, then, it's worth the taxi spot if you've got one. Another one, this is just a little personal favorite, Joshua Cephas. He's ending up in Jacksonville. He's coming from UTSA, a little bit smaller school, pretty good player, probably not going to be a star, especially considering the receivers that they're putting out there now with first-round pick Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk. But he is a guy, it's a pretty good route runner. He's able to work his way through the field pretty well. And I think, if anything were to happen to Christian Kirk, he could be able to take over that, over the middle role. He's a guy that was utilized very well at UTSA. But he can go deep, but he can also play the middle of the field as he needs it. And then just cool story, Frank Gore Jr. going to the Bills. We love seeing him going to Pops' old team.
And they love like smaller running backs, right? Like, I think we all think that maybe Gore could, just because of the namesake, like carve out a role somewhere, but can't think of a better place than with the Bills.
Yeah, not at all. That was a solid move for his career. There's a couple guys that I liked when I was watching film on them and see if maybe they end up into doing something. Jalen Coker lands went to Holy Cross, not obviously big school or anything like that, but he lands with the Panthers. Again, their wide receiver core, they got some new pieces, but again, it's still anyone's game if he can really kind of shine through that. I don't think there's anyone there that is a lock to start besides maybe Xavier Leggett, but again, even then, I don't know if I consider him a lock.
Thielen and Deontay.
Yeah.
And then,
after that, it's like,
Leggett, we'll see how fast he can progress. It'll be interesting to see, if they just immediately have him out in 3 wide sets or not. That'll be interesting.
Yeah. Again, outside the top 3, Jonathan Mingo was very bad last year. I don't think he's a lock personally. Different regime now. So he's got a chance. A couple guys went to the Chiefs over the weekend there. Emmanuel Bailey and Carson Steele, 2 guys who I kind of didn't hate watching film on. Again, Kansas City we always love having people in Kansas City there outside of Isaiah Pacheco. Anything's possible with that backfield, to be honest, at any time. Dalton Hooker, tight end, Colorado State, ends up with the Saints. Again, didn't get drafted, but there were some decent things I saw in him with film. He could be a guy that kind of pushes for time there. Taysom Hill's on the last leg. Jawan Johnson's a free agent this year or after this year. So a couple guys like that to go out there on waivers to go and pick up if you have extra spots on your taxi squads or bench or whatever. So, all right. So we're going over to the first part of our show tonight, guys. Like I said, we are talking about veterans affected by the NFL draft. And Steve, we're going to have you start us off here. We're going to start with the risers, and then we're going to finish with the negatives. So we're going to start with your riser. Who's your riser post-draft?
So I did a trade in a league this offseason I want to highlight real quick, and I want to see what you guys think of this just for face value, just for funskies. So I traded Kyron Williams, the guy who I was off of immediately, right? So he could still have a good season. I'm not saying anything that, negative about Kyron, but I traded Kyron Williams, Gardner Minshew. The guy I'm going to talk to about for my negative was, just spoilers, Josh Palmer, right? So it was, and then my 110. I received Jonathan Taylor, Zay Flowers, my riser, Jamison Williams, and flipped it for 205. So I just went back a few picks there, and I gave him my 110 to get Jonathan Taylor, Zay Flowers, Jamison Williams. So what do you guys think of that? Just for face value, that's a super flex league, PPR.
Who'd you give up again?
Kyron, Gardner Minshew, Josh Palmer, and my 110.
I mean, I like
I
it.
like it.
I like it. I think you get the best player out of that, and Jonathan Taylor, personally.
Right.
I think if you stack all three up any kind of way, I think you get best player if you go just player to player and then drop in, would you say 5 spots, 7 spots?
Yeah, and I ended up getting Blake Corum with my 205. So I got Blake Corum back. You know,
so you got Kyron Williams 2.0.
Right. And so the thing was with that trade is I got thrashed. Like I got thrashed in my league and they said Kyron and JT is a wash. At that time before the draft, that to me, that's clearly Jonathan Taylor. But
yeah,
I get it because you look at dynasty rankings and Kyron was up there with JT. So I get it. But then they said that Zay Flowers and Josh Palmer was a wash. And then they said that Jameson Williams is just an afterthought. So that line of thinking, I think now that the draft has happened and we can all settle in and see what these teams have done. And I'll start with the Lions. They did absolutely nothing with their wide receiver room for the draft. All they did was they let Josh Reynolds go, which I always thought that was a great piece for that team with Jared Goff. So he's gone. I think he caught about 40 passes last year. Josh Reynolds did, had 5 touchdowns, about 600 yards. So he's gone now, and they haven't done anything. So in steps in Jameson Williams, who, you know, Brad Holmes, the GM, was talking about Jameson Williams. He was talking about Amon-Ra because he just got paid, right? So he's like talking about the wide receiver room. Like, why didn't you add anybody? He was being questioned. Like, no draft. You didn't draft any receivers. The Lions probably could have done that. We like where we're at. The first person he names, Jameson Williams, who was coming on very, very strong after he talked about Amon-Ra. Very, very strong. So we have high hopes for him. At the end of last year, we saw Khalif Raymond wasn't even on the field in the playoffs. It was Josh Reynolds, Jameson Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They went with that trio into the playoffs. And at the end of the season, you could see the snap percentage change with Jameson Williams being out there. Khalif Raymond really wasn't being used, but he'll be now the third guy. So you have Amon-Ra, Khalif Raymond, and Jameson Williams on the outside. So first round pedigree with Jameson. Had a great final year at Alabama once he transferred. And now he's coming into his year 23 season, third year breakout, who, you know, we always say we love a third year breakout in Dynasty. Why are we giving up on Jameson right now? It's not the time. And then I love the news of Jared Goff being paid. You know what you're getting from this team. What you're getting is they were third in passing last year. They were fifth in passing yards per game, right? They score touchdowns, second most in the league. They're in the red zone early, often. That's what you're getting. They made really not a lot of drastic changes for you to believe that you're not going to get the same. Jared Goff, 2 years in a row, Tyler highlighted it, 4,500 passing yards and about 30 touchdowns. A lot of that is going to shift to Jameson. And, you know, the touchdowns really are going to be unpredictable. You can't really presume a lot, but we know that Jameson Williams is a big play guy. He about doubled his production last year, and I think he'll do it again. So you're going to look at something like what these receivers have done, like a DJ Chark for the Lions, right? These guys have put up about 50 catches and about 800 yards. And I think that's what you can expect from Jameson this year.
Yeah, no, I like that there a lot there, to be honest. I think everyone seems to just forgotten about Jameson Williams coming after he came into the league. I mean, a lot of people liked him. I remember that he was a big time wide receiver coming into the league. He just happened to have that.
I mean, in UFC, he was 105. Come on now. And then you're just going to give up on him? I mean, like, I get it with Treylon Burks, right? We've seen what they've done. They've brought in veterans, and that's worse than them drafting guys. They said, okay, we want established guys, and Treylon Burks is now just an afterthought. So, like, you can give up on somebody like that was a first-round pick, but all the signs are pointing up for this team for how they want to use him. You just got to give it time. If you paid like this guy that like, for instance, I'm going on a soapbox here, but this guy that traded Jameson Williams a couple years ago, that was a first round pick. You just gave me that first round pick basically for an afterthought. I mean, that's how you have to think about it, really. And I'm just saying, you cannot give up on Jameson Williams. You want pieces of this Lions offense, and he's could be a very good piece of it.
I mean,
I
he's
like
going
that.
into his third year, so.
Yeah, I think I like it because you look at one thing to remember is 2022 was he didn't play, right? We had the torn
Basically.
ACL in the national championship game, which is in January. He obviously wasn't going to be ready. It says that he played in 6 games, had, 1 reception, 9 targets, which was a touchdown. So,
Right.
great odds there. But, even last year, if you count it as his rookie season, 12 games played, he had 42 targets, just over 350 yards. If we take that as a rookie year, I mean, it's a baseline. It's not a great rookie year. He only played 12 games in it. But if we can keep him healthy and extrapolate that onto like I've been talking about, a good Lions offense, I don't see why he can't be a guy in that offense, especially with how Amon-Ra has been known to play and how well he does that against literally any team. That just opens up that back into the field so well. And if Jameson can stay healthy and continue to mature as much as the Lions coaching staff says that he is and says that they hope that he will, and how much they believe in him, especially coming off of that first year and then everything last year, you either got to buy in or they are just as insane as everyone thinks they are.
I mean, they have Donovan Peoples-Jones there, who in the same conversation, Holmes, talked about him coming into the system a little bit late and really had, couldn't get integrated that fast, right? So he barely played. But still, that shows me that with the confidence they had in the playoffs of saying, hey, we're just going to go with these 3 receivers. And Williams, he scored a touchdown in that game against the 49ers too.
Yeah.
So we just saw him be very, so I really believe that they'll have the confidence to have him out there as much as they had Josh Reynolds out on the field, which was 70 to 90% of snaps. And if Jameson Williams is giving you that, I think he's going to have a productive season.
Again, this is a veteran team that wants to run the ball. They didn't really have a need to go out there and put this kid in a bad situation. They worked him into the offense. Again, this past year, remember, he missed the first 4 games due to suspension. Takes time to kind of get yourself into this offense and get things kind of going. He's going to be the number 2 wide receiver coming into this offense. He's going to make moves up. So I like this first post rising here with Jameson Williams, Steve. This is a good first one. All right, over to our second one. Tyler, what do we have as a post rising player?
Yeah, my post draft rising player, it's pretty simple, pretty easy. Bryce Young. Second-year quarterback, or going to be second-year quarterback in Carolina. So, we look back, resident Texans fan, at the Week 18 Hail Mary and 2-point conversion that changed the face of the league, right? The Texans, all they had to do was go out there and not win a game, and they were going to have first overall pick, and they're going to have Bryce Young. They, for some reason, Lovie Smith just wanted to go out on a high. And so they go out and end up winning that game with Davis Mills and one of the most bizarre endings you'll ever see in a game. But that dropped the Texans down to number 2. And that gave the actually Chicago number 1 overall pick. And Carolina ended up trading a lot, which ended up being Caleb Williams this year too, to move up to number 1 to take Bryce Young. And the problem with taking Bryce Young number 1 overall after the year that they had is that they had no one on their team, right? And so we go into this rookie season and, we have offensive rookie of the year, number 2 overall pick, CJ Stroud, but we also have sort of bottom of the barrel Bryce Young, who is like bottom 5 to 8 in just about every statistic, right? 28, 77 passing yards, 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and then 253 yards on the ground, just kind of running for his life out there, right? But we look at the team that surrounded him. We got a backfield of a very disappointing Miles Sanders and a pretty all right Chuba Hubbard. We've got a receiving core of Adam Thielen, who really just did what I definitely didn't expect with, over 1,000 yards. But then we've got Jonathan Mingo, another rookie, 43 receptions for just over 400 yards. DJ Chark, 35 receptions for over 505 touchdowns. And then their star tight end Hayden Hurst had 18 receptions for 184 yards and a touchdown.
Don't use the word star tight end.
Yeah,
solid.
He's as star powered as they were getting. But we look at what Carolina did in this draft, right? Obviously, didn't have their number 1 overall pick due to the trade to go get Bryce Young last year. But sitting with that same spot in the second round, they move up and go get South Carolina receiver Xavier Legette. And then they take another second round pick that they had, move back from 39, and then jump back up to 53 from where they had moved back from to go get the RB1 of the class, Jonathan Brooks. And then just because fate would have it, they had another number 1 pick in a round in the 4th round, and they go get Jatavian Sanders from Texas, Jonathan Brooks' teammate, but also really good receiving tight end, right? That's what he does best. He's not going to be thrown out there to block. And so the Panthers showed in 2 trade-ups for some pretty premier guys at their position in this draft. They showed investment in Bryce Young. And I know we're talking post-draft, but even before the draft started, the Panthers also went out and traded for Deontay Johnson from the Steelers, right? So now we're going from a receiving core of Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo, DJ Chark, and Hayden Hurst to Adam Thielen, presumably just because he had 1,000 yards last year, even though he's going to be like 34 years old. We've got Adam Thielen. We've got Deontay Johnson. We've got Xavier Legette, who's a first-round receiver, at least in their eyes. Instead of disappointing Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, we're going to have Chuba Hubbard and then Jonathan Brooks as he begins to get healthy, who is a lot of people's running back 1 in this class, who they traded up for in the second round, the only second-round running back to go. And then you have Jatavian Sanders over Hayden Hurst at tight end. They're starting to build a young team, right? They didn't fall into the situation that the Texans fell into last year where the quarterback just shocked the world and everyone just was elevated by his play, right? Bryce Young didn't do that for the Panthers. Yeah. But now we see the Panthers in their rebuild, understanding it's not a 1-year rebuild, in their rebuild going out and actually investing in weapons for Bryce Young. And I think that all of that culminates to making Bryce Young a better overall quarterback, especially in the league, right? We look at, 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Some of those were him being young and a rookie and having to force throws. But at the same time, he didn't have a ton to do, right? We see just really a disappointing year from him. Quarterback 23. Great. Yeah, quarterback 23. We're talking about going and buying quarterbacks. Bryce Young is young enough and cheap enough that you can go get him and invest in him and look at what the Panthers are building, right? We've got a young running back that's great in his own scheme, great pass-catching running back. We've got a really good receiver in Xavier Legette, also one of the funnier receivers and overall players in the draft, one of the best voices in the NFL now. At receiver, right? We've got a receiving tight end in Jatavian Sanders. I just see the Panthers, I don't think they're going to go on a tirade and win 9-10 games this year. But I think that offense is going to actually be able to be something. And I think that Bryce Young, instead of kind of being thrown to the wolves and going under 3,000 passing yards, is going to actually be able to elevate himself, right? We're going to look at,
he's going to
maybe
have less than
3,500. Yeah. He's going to have at least more than 3,000.
No, I'm going to say he's going to have less than 3,000.
Oh, you still have him at less than 3,000.
I still think he's going to have less than 3,000 this
Interesting.
year.
I would take the over. I would take the over on 3,000.
I'll take the under.
Okay.
Let's see.
This makes sense for him as a rising player. Absolutely. They added pieces around him that we wanted to. I still think there's a year or maybe 2 years away from him really, if he ever reaches his talent level coming out of the draft. I think they still need a true wide receiver 1, and I still don't believe they have that on their team. That's how I feel about it.
I think that, it's you have to temper your expectations, but it cannot be as bad as last year. And like we've seen some bleak rookie seasons. Like Josh Allen once upon a time was looking bad, and it turned around. So we're not going to get Josh Allen, but
no,
we cannot get the Bryce Young that we saw last year, right?
So I think it's like he doesn't have a rushing floor, so that doesn't help him already.
Right.
You know,
100%. And
you could look at the opposite. You know, Adam Thielen falls off a cliff. You know, he was great last year, but he's going to be 34, 35.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson has a terrible catch
rate. He'll be done soon. Yeah.
Deontay Johnson can't catch the ball, whether or not he can separate very well. He has not been always good at catching the ball.
But at least he can separate. That's
a big thing. That is an upgrade for sure.
So getting a guy who can separate with Deontay and getting a guy who can just jump up and get the ball with Leggett, like that helps a quarterback who is going to be under duress, right? And I think that to Tyler's point that this is somebody who you can really get. Like we spent the 101, the 102 on Bryce Young. You want that discount? It's right now. If you didn't spend that last year, great. Just you've waited. All right, let me just send you whatever right now for Bryce Young, and you can get it. And I think that it has to be better than last year, just because of like the weapons that they put there. It'll just be helpful if they can get the ball to these guys early and just two-step drop back, get the ball out of your hand. That's something he didn't do at all last year. And if they just get that one thing shored up, I believe that 3,000 plus yards, that's how you'll hit it. He's got to get the ball out of his hands quick.
Yeah. There's also 2 points to that. You know, one, we see the investment, and of course we're talking dynasty, right? This is long term. We don't want to wait until Bryce Young is really something to have to again invest real capital in him. But also we look at Dave Canales is the one coming in and taking over, right? Dave Canales ran an offense. There was better weapons, but he ran an offense that made Baker Mayfield look pretty darn good at times.
Right. And that's a good comp right there.
Yeah. And so we take Bryce Young and, you know, I don't want to throw out his rookie year because it could be useful later in seeing how he had improved, but we see them starting to invest and like actually care to put guys around him and not just like, hey, you're a number 1 overall pick, go do it, which is what we see with a lot of number 1 overall picks. Honestly, we see an investment from the team, especially through the draft where, you know, they said they're trading up so that they could get that 5th-year option on Leggett. They're trading up to go get Jonathan Brooks because Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders weren't doing it for him. I don't know what they have at tight end right now. I think Hayden Hurst is gone, but now they've got Jatavian Sanders. Tommy Tremble. My point exactly, right? We see investment from the team earlier, considering he just finished his rookie year. But to Steve's point, right? He was one of your top 2 picks in the draft last year, and you can go get him for pretty cheap. And so
2025 first was a recent trade I saw for him this past week.
Yeah. And you look at that 2025 quarterback class, ain't a lot. So, you know,
I heard.
That's fair.
So I mean, I like Bryce Young. It's going to be a longer play. Like, I don't think he's going to come in and throw for 4,700 yards and 40 touchdowns this year and just like go bananas. But I think, you know, I see his line is set, you know, from Vegas at about 3,150, getting a little improvement there, a couple more yards a game.
For him.
But, you know, if we see him go up like 3,250, 33, 34, we see those improvements, but we also see the Panthers begin to win games. They're going to continue to invest, right? They're not just going to leave them on the floor. And if anything, we at least have Xavier Leggett, Jonathan Brooks, and Jatavian Sanders, barring a trade later in their rookie contract. We have them there for the at least extent of Bryce Young's rookie contract. So I like that they're actually buying in and doing something. I like the price that you can get Bryce Young at. It's a little bit more of the same argument as Steve of like, why would you already somewhat throw this guy out just after that real 1 year of production, like with Jameson Williams?
Right.
I like it. All right. Over to my rising post-draft player, and it's Zamir White. I thought no other running back had a fantastic draft for themselves, and then Zamir White. I mean, he comes in as the true starter for this Raiders team. They didn't bring any competition in. Like, they didn't draft anyone besides Dylan Loeb, who to me is a better kind of do-it-all player, special teams kind of player that I think will be good for their special team unit, but not someone they're going to really use in their backfield, I think, all that much. I mean, they have Alexander Madison, Amir Abdullah. So in reality, Zamir White is coming in as almost a featured role running back that I think, for the most part, I think you could still somewhat get him relatively cheaper than most breakout potential running backs that we've seen in past years. I feel like there's still potential to go out and get a guy like White for like a late first round pick, who I think has potential to see well over 230 carries in 2024 and do well with them. I mean, we saw glimpses of him being a starter last year at the end of the last season, averaged 14.5 fantasy points per game over the last 5 weeks, ran over 100 yards against a really good Kansas City Chiefs run defense, and was tied for as many breakaway runs as Josh Jacobs had last year and did it on 120 fewer carries. White was somebody who I think people should definitely be buying more into right now. And then before waiting until the season starts and watching him have a great first game, and then you're almost paying up to top tier level talent to get a guy like White on your team. I think the market is still not super hot. It's obviously warm, but I think at this point right now, the season, he's rising up boards for me, and he's someone that I'm going to start, making trades for, and somebody when we get the redraft talk season, somebody that is going to rise up my board more and more as the season goes on, based on how this draft went for him.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think people are still waiting on something to happen. There's not a lot more that can happen. Like, who's out there, right? Like Kareem Hunt maybe could take away a couple touchdowns. But besides that, Zamir White looks destined to get a big workload this year.
Yeah. All right. So that's enough with our positivity for the day, guys. Now we're on to the negatives.
Tearing down.
Yeah, tearing them down. We're tearing some players down here. So Steve, we'll let you start us off here at the top. Who is your tear down player or your post-draft faller right now?
I will go easy on Josh Palmer, but I already alluded to it earlier. And listen, it's a new regime, right? So let's start with that. And we know what this new regime wants to do. It's run the ball. That's not to say that Josh Palmer, who's a starter on this offense, is just going to go away. He's not. I think he'll definitely be utilized. And like I said, he is a starter. But what did they do in the draft? They obviously got Lab McConkey with their first pick of the second round, 202. And what this skill set, what he has is he's going to be in the slot and he's going to be hyper targeted. I think he's coming in right away and he's going to be easily the number one target on this team. And I really believe that we shouldn't over analyze that they're going to run the ball a lot. I still think that there are passing yards to go around. Like Justin Herbert right now is being like an afterthought in best ball drafts right now. It's absolutely crazy. But again, they didn't stop there. They drafted 2 late round picks that I think are actually viable. Like, usually you would say, a 6th and a 7th round receivers aren't going to do much. But okay, so you get Brendan Rice, who's a big body, and he just happens to be Jerry Rice's son. So, there has to be something there where, okay, Quentin Johnston, if he can't get it done, let's bring in a couple more big bodies. They brought in Cornelius Johnson, who just had a very good year with Michigan, with Harbaugh. And what we'll find out right away is Josh Palmer, how can you run block? Are you bigger than Cornelius Johnson? Are you bigger than Brendan Rice? Well, you're not. So you already have a disadvantage there. And if you can't run block, you might not be on the field as much as the depth chart implies. And then you bring in DJ Chark, you signed him. So all of the offseason acquisitions for the receiver core just tells me that Josh Palmer might be an odd man out. So before the draft, I think that people were viewing him as a potential, hey, he's the wide receiver 1 for this offense. Now it's really going to be hard for him to get all the targets. And I just don't think he can ever get back to that 100+ targets that he received a couple years ago.
Yeah, definitely. On the depth chart, he was the receiver 1 coming out of are going into the draft, but there's just not really a ton of excitement in the passing game. Obviously, you have a good quarterback in Justin Herbert. But like you said, I think that Ladd McConkey is going to kind of go in and eat up targets, right? And then, I'm a personal hater, but Quentin Johnson, he could figure out how to play football again.
That'd be nice.
We'll see. Talk about wasted first-round picks over there. But, yeah, Josh Palmer was being, I don't want to say highly valued, but definitely higher than really he should be.
Right.
And if you weren't able to sell him off, you're just holding, you better pray that he has a big boom game, because if not, you're just holding a dead asset.
And for people were waiting for him to kind of, and then they saw it. They saw a little, and even last year he had a couple good games. And I think this year he will do that as well. But over the course of the season, there's just going to be only so many targets to go around.
I'm still pretty high on Joshua Palmer personally. That's how I kind of feel. I get it. You bring in a lot more weapons in this offense. There's a lot more competition. He's not signed this year. The coaching regime has no ties to him. He was a later round pick. It makes a lot of sense. But we saw last year when he took over that wide receiver 2 job from Mike Williams. 60 yards, 77, 60, 130, and a 24.
He did produce.
And he got hurt. And then after that, he came back with Easton Sticks. It's like there's potential for him to still, I think, personally break out. And if you can buy low on him, if you're concerned about how this draft went for them, as a contending team, I'm still willing to spend a later round pick on getting him on my team, because no one's guaranteed anything. And he's not guaranteed anything either. But there's no one on this team where that's the wide receiver 1 on the team. There's no one I can personally say that, whether it's Palmer or not. Ladd coming in, he's fantastic. But is he going to excel as a rookie right away? We don't know. Quentin Johnson, didn't like what I saw last year. No one really liked him last year. Right. And it's hard to expect him to be this brand new guy in one season here. Brendan Rice is still a 7th round pick that's going to have to develop. The thing is that Josh Palmer's a free agent this year. So, that could help him maybe. People on contract years, they like to kind of play harder. I agree, though. Faller for sure in that sense of what the Chargers showed us in the draft. But I still want to buy him. I still want him on my team if I can get him on the team.
If you believe in the talent, and then also, like you said, it's still a nebulous situation. So it's not like you have to, I think you trade him get him for a 3rd round pick. If you can get him for a 3rd round pick, might as well try to take the shot there. But I think that ultimately he is a loser. And, if you were wanting to trade him before the draft, would have been the time.
Yeah.
Someone clip that. Ultimately, Josh Palmer is a loser.
You probably could have got a second for him before the draft. So now probably not so much. So, but I get it. All right, Coach Tyler, over to you. Who's your post-draft faller?
Yeah, my post-draft faller, someone we talked about in Coach Steve's trade, actually, and that's Kyren Williams. He's someone that I've talked about as we talked about the rookies and Blake Corum coming in. Just the fact that the Rams rarely ever use a bell cow guy. And we did see this past year, Kyren was the bell cow guy. And that's why everyone loved him and thought that he was going to be this extreme running back this coming year, right? This top 5, top 10 running back, whatever you had him ranked at. Because last year we did see, the next person in line in terms of total carries. Kyren had 228, and we had Royce Freeman with 77. And it makes sense why Kyren Williams was the bell cow back, because Royce Freeman was behind him. And then we've got, Ronnie Rivers, we've got Darrell Henderson as they go, right? But you have a great scheme-minded coach in Sean McVay who goes out and invests a 3rd-round pick in the most efficient running back in college football over the past couple of years, Blake Corum. Right, he was a guy that people looked at his size and kind of pushed him down. People are saying he's going to be a lot better college running back than NFL running back, and I'm not going to say that he's not. But we're not talking about Blake Corum. We're talking about Kyren Williams, right? So Kyren himself, if I remember right, was a 5th round pick. So we don't see a ton of draft investment in him, right? And we do see this great year this past year. But if we look back, there's only been 1 year, which was the year before with Cam Akers, so 2022, that we have seen someone in the Sean McVay system have double the carries of the next running back behind him, right? So 2 years ago, it was Cam Akers, 188 carries to Darrell Henderson, 70. And then before that, we see the tandem of Sony Michel, Darrell Henderson, 208, 149. Go back to 2020, we see Cam Akers, 145. This is, I want to say, the Achilles tear year. We got 145, and then we got 138, and then we have another running back behind him at 101, right? And then we go back to the 2019 season, finally, and we get another running back who had double these carries, who was the workhorse in Todd Gurley, who, shout out to Todd Gurley, sad end to his career. He was one of my favorite players. But we look at Todd Gurley, right? And we see that as McVay came in and continued to build this team into the team that he wanted, we rarely saw a bell cow back. We saw a lot of backs that had maybe 50 more carries throughout the year as it pertained to injuries and games missed and things like that. But we see a lot of two running backs. And the big thing that we see as we look through those two running backs is it's very rarely the same guy year to year that is that bell cow, right? We see Cam Akers sort of force-fed the ball a couple years ago, but that's just because they were trying to figure out what they were doing, right? And Henderson couldn't stay healthy. But you bring in Blake Corum to a Kyron Williams team, and it just makes sense that he is eating at carries that Kyron could have, right? And obviously, Matt Stafford getting older, still a great quarterback, got great weapons, especially with the emergence of Puka. But this is a team that is going to want to run the ball, right? At least for a decent mark of their offensive plays. And Blake Corum coming in as a workhorse back who has, 300 plus carries in his college career, maybe even more. I honestly forget the number that we looked at the other day. But he's coming in as this workhorse ready back. And I'm not saying he's going to be the workhorse over Kyron, but I think Kyron's going to get that 228 carries that he had last year eaten into pretty well, right? And then we look at the future of the team. Kyron is, coming into he's still under contract until 2026, but Blake Corum is now under contract until 2028, right? And the last time that the Rams extended a running back was the aforementioned Todd Gurley back in 2018. The last time that we saw the team make a commitment to a running back was Todd Gurley in 2018. Since 2018, in that contract, I have gone through, graduated high school, and am almost 2 years into my first full-time job out of college. Or I finished college, not high school. Yeah, I graduated high school, went through college, got a degree, and I'm almost 2 years into my first full-time job.
I love it. Todd Gurley, I think since 2016 is still like 9th in rushing.
Really? I was looking at an article talking about his contract and how highly he still would have been paid in today's NFL. But with all that being said, right, we're talking about losers. Kyron Williams was this high-rated back or high-ranking back because of his, bell cow ability. And within that, if he's not having the bell cow numbers, who's to believe that he's going to put up, another 1,100 yards on the ground and 12 touchdowns, right? Like, we didn't see a ton of work. As I'm looking at it, we didn't see any work in the receiving game. Unless I'm just losing my mind and can't see anything, right?
From Williams?
Yeah.
Oh, Williams had a lot of carries.
Never mind. 32 receptions. Never mind. I didn't see him. I was looking at him on the roster, and it looked weird. So we see a little bit of pass catching. That's not Blake Corum's MO. But
no.
Corum's going to eat into those touches, right? Partially because of just how good he is, and partially because that's just the Rams system, right? And as the Rams continue to jump year after year from running back to running back, I just don't see why Kyron Williams would be the outlier, especially for a guy that was a 5th-round pick who, like, physically, he's not an outstanding running back. We saw little glimpses this year, but he's not this insane freak athlete, and he doesn't have draft capital behind him. So why would we be led to believe that the team is going to invest everything into him when they just took a day 2 running back who just happens to be, one of the greatest, at least college running backs in terms of statistics that I can remember in my time of life?
That's fair. I like it. Steve, any comments, Steve?
I mean, yeah, I've had a lot to say, I think, about Kyren on this podcast. But I don't want it to be like where it's, oh, Kyren is not valuable in fantasy, because he is. And to Tyler's point, McVay's going to use him, and he's going to use Blake Corum also. They're going to be, I think, more of a 50-50 split than anything, where, when you had Kyren ranked as the 6th or 7th best running back in Dynasty, that doesn't come with a 50-50 timeshare. So now that Corum is on the team, and back-to-back years, like you're talking about, Tyler, over 240 carries, over 1,400 yards, and 18 touchdowns 2 years ago in his junior year, 27 touchdowns last year. So they got somebody who can put the ball in the end zone. Not that Kyren couldn't do it, but the Rams are going to find themselves in the red zone often, and it would probably do themselves a service if they weren't just trying to, send Kyren up the middle every time. Now you have somebody who can really has, made a name for himself doing that. So I think when you talk about touchdown regression, I think that's likely more than anything for Kyren, where, like to your point, Steve, I think that Kyren is going to be the predominant pass catcher still of the two. I think where we're really going to see the regression is not only in total touches, but potentially touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this, for me, I think it helped better value Williams because he was being ranked so high in Dynasty. It's like, I don't like him that high, though. I don't know if he's ever going to be as high as what we saw last year. I feel like this brings him down to more of a mellow level where you feel like, all right, he's not going to be an elite running back, but now I don't feel like he's going to completely bust. Maybe, the fewer carries could be good for him. I kind of see it as a Jamal Williams, Aaron Jones kind of thing back with the Packers where, Kerryon Williams gets a little bit fewer carries, obviously, but he's efficient enough that you'll like him still, and he gets the pass catching work. Well, Jamal Williams kind of took more of the the brunt work, and that's Blake Corum's job now. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna get RB 4 or 5 from Kerryon Williams this year. But if it gives me RB 12, I'm still pretty happy. RB 13, I'm still pretty happy with that. He'd have to have a complete disaster, I think, to completely fall outside the top 20 running backs personally. Unless he gets 0 touchdowns and it all goes to Corum at the goal line and he just has the pass catching role. But good value, but not
to your
the same
point,
guy.
This year it would be really surprising if Kyren was outside of that top 20, 24. That would be very surprising. But I think what we'll see is more like RB 16, RB 15, and then you're like, well, I was expecting, top 5 guy potentially.
Yeah. That's if you traded for him. Don't trade for him now because you're not going to get that RB5 in 2024. So, all right. And my last faller here. Oh, I wrote riser, but my last faller, let me fix that real quick. My last faller is Michael Pittman Jr. And people might not like this one as much, and I understand completely why. But for me, Michael Pittman Jr. the last couple of years has been a guy of targets, production, value. 140 targets, back-to-back seasons here. There's really hasn't been anyone else in this offense that really has stepped up. And whether or not you like A.D. Mitchell, that's a different conversation here. But the Colts went out there and they still drafted a guy in the second round who was in potential to be a first-round pick, but he fell, unfortunately. And the Colts got him, and they got themselves another weapon in this offense here. Now, will Michael Pittman still be the wide receiver 1? He's still considered the wide receiver 1. Absolutely. There's not a problem with that. But the fact is that they went out there and they didn't have to take him. They had Josh Downs. They had Alec Pierce. Whether or not you like him, you probably don't. But sustainable stretch guy. They didn't have to go out there and get a wide receiver per se, but they end up taking a guy they liked in that round 2 that fell. And Mitchell's a guy that if he's on, he can be really hot. But when he's off, he's unfortunately really off. on the field, unfortunately. And he kind of fits what, Anthony Richardson wants to do, and he can air the ball deep. And for me, if targets are kind of going to go to Mitchell at some point, and Josh Downs is kind of gaining his momentum and going into year 2 of his career, there could be a potential for fewer targets going to Michael Pittman's way. Last year, Mark Gardner-Minshew was the quarterback, and that was, everyone liked that because he just threw it to Michael Pittman half the time. And he averaged 31 attempts per game, Gardner-Minshew. Well, last year, Anthony Richardson averaged about 21 attempts. I don't know if a quarter of those attempts are going to consistently go to Michael Pittman Jr. consistently, or if they're not going to take some deep shots down, but because but Anthony Richardson has that ability to throw the ball downfield more if he's not running with the ball. So for me, I have Michael Pittman Jr. as kind of a faller. I mean, he's still a really good wide receiver. He's a nice high-end wide receiver too, but I don't know if he reaches 140 targets like he's had the last few seasons, like 120, 110. And that could be a big difference. And he's not a big touchdown guy. So if he's getting you 4 touchdowns, he's averages about 4 touchdowns a season. He's someone that's kind of falling for me right now. I don't know how you guys feel. You guys probably feel differently, but that's how I feel about Pittman right now.
Yeah, so we're just affirming Steve's trade. Go get Jonathan Taylor. Pittman's not going to do anything in the receiving game. And get rid of Kyron Williams. It's just a win-win situation for him.
There he goes.
Yeah, I'm not. I've kind of voiced my concerns with A.D. Mitchell. I feel like he was someone that was kind of overhyped going into the draft process, and seeing him fall to, really kind of where I saw him, where he should have been going, was really affirming for me. But also, I think he's going to be one of those players that's definitely a better real life, like NFL player than fantasy player. But at the same time, in the same vein of Kyron Williams, Blake Corum, he's going to eventually eat into Michael Pittman's usage. Like Steve said, if Anthony Richardson is throwing it 20, 25 times a game, you've got to hope that a quarter of those are going to any receiver to make them really super viable and valuable for your fantasy team, right? Pittman obviously has the name, and he's got some money behind that name. But outside of that, it's really just hoping that Anthony Richardson doesn't run the ball as much as he does. And if he doesn't, there's a good chance that Jonathan Taylor's running the ball, right? And then if he doesn't, you really got to hope that Michael Pittman's just the only one open, right? Because we'll see if Anthony Richardson can get him the ball like that. But I like this as a faller. He's not necessarily a guy that I thought was a faller because I just looked at how I viewed A.D. Mitchell. But definitely hearing your reasoning behind it, he's falling into that falling category for me.
Might be more overall than the draft per se, but I still think Mitchell will eat into his work. I feel like Mitchell's talent is better than what you got from Alec Pierce last year.
Oh, yeah.
And that's an upgrade right there that you didn't have last season.
Well, let me ask you this. Who is between A.D. Mitchell and Michael Pittman? Who's the guy most likely to catch 8-yard slant and take it to the house?
Josh Downs.
Good one. But it's Mitchell, right? It's not Pittman of those two. Who's has the actual breakaway speed?
Mitchell's got the speed.
Yeah.
Pittman's fast, but Mitchell's fast. I think personally faster. So as a player.
My point is, I think that, with the injury and any time that Richardson drops back to pass, he's going to want to get the ball out of his hands a little bit earlier. And the big play is probably going to come from Mitchell. Now it'll be interesting to see how Mitchell progresses. I think like Leggett, Mitchell's another guy who, how quickly can he be implemented into the offense? How much, is it going to take maybe 4 or 5 games for him to be utilized more, seal the field a little bit more? But yeah, just overall less passes for this team with perceived Anthony Richardson and then bringing in A.D. Mitchell. I think it's a good point that we just might not see the hyper-targeted Michael Pittman again this year.
Yeah. I mean, again, if they would have took a wide receiver in round 4, round 5, I would have been like, you know what? Yeah. I mean, I'm not overly nervous, but they spent round 2 capital on a player that had potential. Some people had him as a potential round 1 upside in terms of talent. So, I really do believe at some point Michael Pittman's hyper high target share that he's had the last few years could come down, which is definitely going to negatively affect him in fantasy. So, all right. Well, that is going to wrap up our show tonight, guys. A lot of fun. Love talking to veterans. It's almost that season where we're going to get into more veteran talk, and unfortunately less rookie talk here, but that's my bread and butter a little bit better personally. But Coach Steve, anything you want to say before we get going tonight?
No, man, it was a great show. Really think that, if you guys are if you guys are watching this time of year, I think that you guys have an edge, right? We're trying to give you guys an edge this early. So I think you can translate a lot of this, obviously, to your startups, to your trade decisions in Dynasty. But again, also looking at best ball, looking at guys like maybe you don't draft Michael Pittman if you think that maybe A.D. Mitchell later can be, just as effective on the season. So just little things like that. But, give me a shout out on Twitter at FFProfessorST3 if you need any advice. Love to chat.
All right. I love it. Coach Tyler?
Yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds. Me and Coach Steve both write for them, both do some stuff with them. Use code COACH. Let them know that we sent you. But yeah, keep checking out our stuff. We need to get Robbie back on here and hit up one of those puppy drafts soon.
Well, I don't really have a topic for next week. I was going to do a startup mock draft, but we could maybe get into some best ball maybe next week. We'll talk about it. That'd be fun, something different. We don't really do best ball too much on the show, so that could be something fun to do. But yeah, guys, like I said, we're here every Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our YouTube channel. It will be posted a couple days up on Spotify and all those places. We're getting close to the end of Dynasty talk, at least over at the overall concept of Dynasty. Starting in June, we're going to get back into redraft to some extent here. We got some guests coming on in June, July. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to start getting you guys ready for the season because now that you've done your rookie drafts, it's time to start getting ready. If you're competing, kind of start competing now. And if you're a couple months away from doing your redrafts, it's never bad to get the information ahead of time now. And that's what we're here to do for you guys. So, we thank you all for listening. Tune in until next Monday. We'll come up with you guys with a fun show there. Tune in until next time, everyone. And have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of claws.